We're set, Laser?
Yep. You
Okay, perfect.
are live.
Perfect. Well, I'd like to welcome the community to the Greenberg Central School District Community Forum. My name is Dr. Dale Caldwell. I am with Ray and Associates leading the search. Just so you know, we reached out to well over 1,100 superintendents around the country. You know, we had over 50 applicants, and we've whittled it down to our final two excellent candidates. And I can say right now that Greenberg will do well with it, no matter who's chosen. So the process tonight, and we had originally said it'll start out at 6 o'clock, which is now, and we'll go no later than 8:30. We will go as long as until we finish the questions, or 8:30, whichever comes first. Our format is pretty simple. I have a list of questions. I will ask them both the question. So I'll alternate starting. So everybody will have a chance to say their answer first and their answer second on every other question. So with that, let's get started. And there were 115 questions that we got from the community. We were able to whittle it down. There were a lot of overlap in the questions, a lot of similar questions. So we've whittled it down to roughly around 20 or so questions. So the first question I'll pose to Linda Iverson. So our candidates are Linda Iverson and Dennis O'Hara. And so again, as I said, wonderful candidates, and we're just excited to be here. And we just want to thank the community for their participation. The community sent in hundreds of responses for what they're looking for in a candidate before. So the community has been very active in this process. And so we just want to thank all of you for your participation. So, all right, let's get going. So Linda Iverson, so the first question, based on what you have learned about our district, how do you intend to include parents in planning and promoting district improvements?
Yes. So thank you, Dr. Caldwell. And let me preface my answer by first saying thank you and welcome and good evening to the community members, civic leaders, stakeholders, administrators, faculty, staff, parents, and students, all the important people in this work. And it's a pleasure to be here this evening to interview with you and meet with you for this position of superintendent of your district. I hope tonight I'm able to demonstrate to you my broad experience and knowledge and skill set that I bring to this position. And that makes me, I think, a match for your district, as well as you being a match for me. So this work about being a superintendent is around the spokes of a wheel. I use this analogy a lot of times with my principals. I'm meeting with them around an organization such as a school system. There's spokes in the wheel. There are many pieces, many facets. And the spoke of community involvement and parents is equally as important as all of the others. And if any one of those spokes is missing, the wheel of a bike, it becomes imbalanced. So with that analogy, that is how I will approach the work. The parents, the community, that involvement is very important to student achievement. We can't do this work alone at the district level, at the central office level, at the principal level. So what I've done with principals is to assure that they are welcoming environments in all of our buildings, environments where parents feel a sense of belonging, from the secretary to the principal, that the environments have a shared vision around that everyone in the building believes in the vision, has been part of it. And when you walk in that building, there's an aura around that I belong here. So before we get into specific things that will happen, that's what, as a metric that I use to evaluate that environment in schools. So once that piece is there, I think that brings more involvement in the schools. In addition to that, beyond the open houses and the parent conferences and the assemblies, the approach we will use is more of a broad scope, more of an integrated focus. Because what I have found with my principals who are doing well with this, have great community involvement, great numbers at all participation in activities. The scope must be, and this is what I will promote in the district, that we have more of an integrated focus around academics that includes parents as true stakeholders in the work. Because again, this work cannot be done without you. So what that means is that parents are involved in decision-making, comfortable, raising questions, expressing concerns. And as I say, being on committees where appropriate, that parents feel comfortable bringing concerns to the principals about things around their children and their learning, that there are extensions beyond the school, that stakeholders and partners are involved in the school. So my concept around involving parents is around just having a broader focus around that and extending beyond the school to ensure that we show parents even how they can become more involved and how we connect with parents in supporting them and their students in activities outside of the school. So I see engagement as being broader, and I think it's beyond the traditional ways we think of engagement. I think it's broader than that. Was that my time?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
no, that was just a computer, but no, that was good. So, so Dennis O'Hara, again, based on what you have learned about our district, how do you intend to include parents in planning and promoting district improvements?
Yeah, thank you. And first, I think I just would like to echo some of the things Linda said. Welcome to everybody, and to thank everybody in the community for your involvement. It's really been my privilege to participate every step of the way through this process. And I find Greenberg to be an impressive community, and I think a community that has tremendous potential moving forward. Regarding your question, Dr. Caldwell, you know, I have 4 sons. Nothing in the world's more important to me than my children. I imagine that's how every parent in Greenberg is. And everything I do is through the compass of what would I want. My sons are my compass, so everything is through the lens of what would I want for my own children. For 13 years, I was a principal of a high school on Long Island that's almost identical in size to Woodlands Middle High School. And by coincidence, it's also grades 7-12. And for the last 5 years, I've been a superintendent of a district that's a little bit larger than Greenberg. I have a completely open door policy. In fact, in both of those leadership positions, I think just about every single person in the community has my personal cell phone number. I have a no question goes unanswered policy. And again, as a parent, I know what it's like to send your children to school and be worried about their achievement, worried about their safety, and being available to respond to parents as quickly as possible is crucial. In terms of getting to know the community, I already have a very detailed entry plan that I shared with the Board of Education, and that you know, I would really be eager to execute in Greenberg. And it lays out in very clear terms how I would go about meeting everyone in the community, whether it's administrators, teachers, faculty, staff, community organizations, civic groups, fire departments, religious leaders, basically making myself available, asking a lot of questions, spending the first 30 days on a listening and learning tour, and getting everybody to know me. And I think it's really about earning trust, earning respect, and communicating to people and demonstrating to people that I'm here to serve your children. And I think that's the best way to go about it.
Excellent. So we'll stay with you to give you the first shot at answering the second question. How will you incorporate equity and inclusion, not just in the hiring of staff, but in the needs of educating our students?
Yeah, you know, listen, the biggest challenge in education, even in our society today, is equity and access. And you just have to make every decision with the student's best interest in mind. There's so many capable students in our country, certainly in Greenberg. For me, it's about academic press. It's about making sure that every teacher in the school district and every administrator has a growth mindset, meaning that we might not be great at it today. We're not great at it yet, but we're going to stay at it. We're going to stick with our effort. It's about encouraging children. It's about creating programs that remove obstacles and remove gates so that children can be incorporated into the most rigorous program they can handle as early as possible. And strangely enough, I'm obsessively focused on student outcomes. So we have an obsessive focus where I lead right now on preparing every student for his or her first day beyond our high school. And that starts in our elementary schools.
Thank you. Thank you. Linda, I'll read the question. How will you incorporate equity and inclusion, not just in the hiring of staff, but in the needs of educating our students?
Yes. So that I will echo some of the things that were mentioned, but that whole conversation around equity has risen to a level we all know nationally right now in the middle of this pandemic, and never ever in my career has the difference in equity and zip codes in in a city or towns showed up through this pandemic, where we really saw clearly where there were some haves and there were some have-nots. And I know through this pandemic, all districts, as a superintendent myself, I know we received a lot of federal funding and a lot of resources so to help bridge that gap around some of the technology and some of the Chromebooks. But I think finally we are getting it right, because we kind of know now that with equity is what kids need. And without that, us addressing their needs, Dr. Caldwell, then they cannot access education. So my approach to assuring that equity is that I have in my practice worked on assuring that we have equity in everything we do, and equity in the practice of the adults, from a vision of equity, a vision that all kids can learn, a vision that everyone is on the same team, that we're going to do everything we can to assure that every child is leading. And in doing that and building that capacity so we have equity, we do need to recruit highly talented principals and teachers who have a lens around that, know how to, principals who have a strong eye for the instructional leadership, know good instruction when they see it, know how to evaluate it, and know how to make sure that accountability is happening. Second, we need great teachers. So I would assure in those positions, we had the very best capacity. Teachers who are very familiar with those learning gaps, knowing how to close gaps based on student needs, knowing what supports materials students need to do that. And principals who know how to create systems in their buildings to allow teachers to do that through professional development, through building schedules that include more instructional time to give more access. I think that equity piece comes from a practice point, from how we address the needs of students, how we recruit a talent of color and race, other diversities to be in our schools, to look like our students, and how we definitely use instructional strategies that sort of what I would say is affirm the culturally diverse students that are in our classrooms together, because we just cannot continue to do what we've been doing. It's just not working. And so now that the lens is equity, and it's a term we all are familiar with, I think that equity should be looked through from staffing, from instruction, and through funding, through resources. It's the lens of doing all we can to ensure students get what they need so we don't have these gaps. And it helps close gaps as well, because gaps come as a result of kids not getting what they need. So as a broader vision, I see equity from all pieces of the organization, and I would assure that all those are, that I work on all parts.
Dr. Caldwell, I think you may be muted.
You're muted.
I'm sorry. Yeah, what do you think you will be able to accomplish in your first 100 days in the position as superintendent? We'll stay with Linda.
Thank you. So I too hope to come in and conduct a listening and learning tour. I know I will develop a 100-day entry plan. My plan would begin with me coming in and not moving too fast, taking a lot of time to build relationships, spend one-on-one time with key stakeholders, board members, central administration, teachers, parents, students in focus groups, individual groups, large groups, and taking time to really listen and learn about the weaknesses, the strengths, what's working well in the district, what are some things that need to be improved, and then, of course, listening to what's being recommended. And I think in that 100 days, by just doing that, just listening, a very important skill, I will probably be able to pick up and hear around some trends that are surfacing that will inform my work. So it gives me some idea around where to begin, and that work using that qualitative sort of data, as well as perhaps surveying the community with getting some more information around some data on where we are. That's the data, and all of that qualitative and quantitative data at that point is what is used to form the new strategic plan, which is is expiring, I know, this June. So that first 100 days is building that. I think my focus will first and foremost be around that tour, but building those relationships. I have found as a superintendent coming in new that transition is really important. And I think if you take the time to build relationships, meet people, get them to know you, you get to know them, and you get to hear the value they bring to the work and the value you appreciate about their work, the more likely as a team we can collaborate and move forward on the goals to build the district and continue down the path where it is. So my 100 days would be around that. I don't think you rush it. I think you take that time. I know there are things we need to approach, but that foundation is very important to the work. And that must happen to inform the work. So my first 100 days will be focused on that, at least the first 30 days of that, and just getting out into the community and building those relationships.
So Dennis, the same question. What do you think you'll be able to accomplish in your first 100 days in the position?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. And Lisa made so many terrific points. I would echo many of them. And I think what I would add is that it's really about building the relationships, or what I would echo, I should say, is it's about building those relationships. For me, I believe it's about earning trust, and it's about letting people see your heart, letting them know what's in your heart, what's in your mind. I have a mantra that's students first, pure intentions, best effort. I think you can't go wrong with that, and I would be communicating that to everybody that I interact with. What worked for me the first time I became a superintendent was making a commitment to be in every teacher's classroom by December 1st. In a district the size of Greenburgh, I think we could do that in a little bit of a shorter time, and I think that's very, very important because there's nothing more important than what happens in a classroom in a school district. It's not the superintendent's office or the principal's office. So spending as much time as I can in classrooms would certainly be on my early agenda. Making myself available to community members and to parents with open office hours and other forums, whether it be a virtual meeting or whether it actually be in person, depending on how we're doing with the pandemic. But basically, I think it's about earning trust, beginning to earn respect, being very transparent about who you are, not only as an educator, but also as a person. You know, there's an adage in education, I'm sure everybody's heard it before, but they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I firmly believe that. I've experienced it many times throughout my career. And I would spend a lot of time with students, from pre-K through 12. Students and children have a sixth sense. They can tell immediately who cares about them. And spending time with them and communicating to the students who you are and that they are your priority would certainly be a big part of the first 100 days. Thank you.
Thank you. And so we'll stay with you. And the next question, number 4, is please discuss the most difficult personnel problem you have ever dealt with and how you resolved it.
Oh, gosh. Dr. Caldwell, I've been an administrator for 23 years, and over that time span, we've had all sorts of personnel situations that I've had to contend with. And one that was particularly challenging to me and particularly disappointing was a school employee. And as most people know, school employees are mandated reporters. And there was some inappropriate behavior happening in a school building concerning an adult and concerning a minor. And this particular employee was aware of it. This employee was a very important person on our child study team and on our crisis team, and was negligent and failed to report it. And I had a very good relationship with this person and a lot of respect for this employee. I had hired her. She had provided a lot of great effort and had been really a pillar of a lot of our important teams. And for some reason, in this case, had a lapse in judgment. And what was challenging about it was that it was a person that not only had I had professional respect for, but had grown fond of, as a, just as a good person on our team. Unfortunately, I had to ask this person to resign and was prepared to take further action if the person was not willing to resign, because a moment ago, I said students first, pure intentions. And this person in her decisions at that point in time did not put students first. And it was personally very challenging and professionally very challenging. But unfortunately, like I said earlier, nothing's more important to me than my own 4 children. And I need to assure every parent that sends a child to our buildings that they are safe. And if we have anybody on faculty or staff who's not making his or her best decisions in every circumstance, then it's just something we can't have.
Thank you very much. I'll read it again. Linda, please discuss the most difficult personnel problem you've ever dealt with and how you resolved it.
Yes. So I'm in the middle of some of that right now. I would say the most difficult, some context about my school district. I inherited a school district that was on the financial watch list on Pennsylvania State Department for failing to take over positive fund balance 3 years in a row. And the district had been hampered by declining student enrollment, loss of programming, high teacher turnover, and high taxes. Loss of businesses and residents leaving the area. And what ended up happening in that culture of revolving door superintendents, they could not keep administrators, a lot of embezzlement, just poor management. And I accepted the challenge of that position, knowing full well going in what I was walking into. And we are now in a success story. But in that culture, what ended up happening was a culture of apathy. Work was dummied down. There were very low expectations of students. There just was no care. And not that I excuse it, I did understand it. Staff, faculty, teachers, and all who were there had lost faith and trust in the district. Why wouldn't they? The leadership was not even consistent. So there was no one leading the district. So when I got there, I saw that a lot in the classrooms. I visited classrooms. I'm a very hands-on superintendent. I have a very strong instructional background, having been a former English teacher, and I know instruction at the elementary, middle, and high school levels, where I've served as an administrator. And so I did a lot of that being in the buildings and in the community, and I went into classrooms, and it brought tears to my eyes, where I saw the level of instruction. But I knew it was work I had to do. There was capacity I had to build. I had to invest in professional development. But I made it very clear from the beginning, and the beginning of the year, as we met as a community around this high expectations for all, and this belief and mindset that all kids can learn, and what that expectation and accountability will be. So as a result of that, doing walkthroughs and informal observations, some teachers rose to the level of needing to go on an improvement plan. Because I do believe everyone should have the opportunity to improve. The whole purpose of an improvement plan is to help make a teacher improve better. Well, through that process, in the plan, you have the indicators that they're working on. You flesh out the activities, the support that the district's going to give them, the support they would like to have. You have dates in it, and you monitor periodically. And they bring in their artifacts and their evidence of where they're progressing on these various indicators. Well, I had a teacher, I've had several who have not progressed. And so according to the codes in Pennsylvania, after you get 2 unsat ratings, that's grounds for discharge. That had never happened in this district. When I got there, everyone had a proficient rating, and the data around student achievement was less than 15%. So there was a disconnect, it was incongruent. So I proceeded with the discharge on the 2 teachers who just had failed to improve as a result of a lot of support and improvement plan. Very difficult. I was new to the district. They had a culture that this too will pass, and how dare you walk in my room. And so I followed the process, and we went through arbitration. I don't go in these situations unprepared. The data, the artifacts were there. She certainly was represented by her counsel and the association. And it was difficult in that, because I'm still the person in front of them as a superintendent, talking vision, encouraging and all, and I really had to think about the district and the students. So it was difficult, and that word got around. And so for a while, there's that thought out there around, she's coming after you. And I just had to remain true to that. My job as superintendent is to ensure that there's high student achievement. We have the very best teachers in our classrooms. because at the end of the day, it's about the students. So that was a couple in my 5 years in my job now. That was my second year in the job. Now that culture's changed. We still have some on plans, but they own the plan and they see the plan now as a vehicle to really help them be better. And they see how some have come off plans. So it's no longer a negative connotation. It's become a vehicle to help accountability and move the district forward. But those are always tough decisions, always.
So we will stay with you for question number 5. Based on your experience in the past in your current superintendent position, what characteristics influence your choice when selecting your management supervisory team?
So I'm the type of leader who leads by example, who, because I do feel that leadership comes from the top down, who leads with integrity, who's trustworthy, who lead with honesty, because I think the true authority of a leader is in that character. It's not the position. The position as superintendent has a level of authority, but true authority is measured by the character of the person leading. So I try to look for those character traits in everyone I interview for positions in my district through questions that elicit those traits out so I can get a feel for who they are. They always get a question around why they're coming to the district. I want to hear that connection to why they feel they're a match as I feel I'm a match to this position here. So I look for that type of character traits. Second, I'm looking as well for just that knowledge and skill set, that background, that experience. Because to move this work, you need the very best talent in these positions. So because organizational capacity, can we do the work? That won't happen if we don't have the right people in the positions. And when I arrived in my district, I had to do a lot of work around that because of the situation I just described to you. The people in the seats were not the right ones there. And it was my role to help them find where they could work best. So re-looking at and changing job descriptions and upping the level of rigor, increasing the skill set, I was able to recruit and better talent to the district. So I look for, of course, credentials, certifications, and things that they must bring. But I'm more interested in the character, try to find out their experiences, how it's connected to how they've moved the district, how they work with people, how they're part of a team, how they collaborate, and how they make decisions. Is it distributed? Are they authoritative? I think I can work with anyone, but those are things that are important to me. You have the skill set, that's one piece, but I look for the character of the person as well, because that's important to me.
Thank you. So Dennis will ask the same question. Based on your experience as a superintendent, what characteristics influence your choice when selecting your management/supervisory team?
Yeah, sure. It's another terrific question. Over the course of my career, I was a science teacher. I was a science department chairperson, assistant principal, high school principal. In every one of those roles, and certainly as superintendent, I've been hiring good people is a really, really important part of the job. I've done extensive research on hiring practices. Just this past fall, a colleague and I presented at NISPA on hiring practices, and I've written an article as well about this. And for me, it's some of the things that were already said. And first and foremost is a person's character and a person's beliefs about students' potential. I can't hire somebody. I would be remiss if I hired somebody who didn't believe that all students can learn and all students can succeed. So that's the bottom line, or the foundation. And then really for me, a long time ago when I was a very young administrator, I had a mentor who said, she said, Dennis, second-rate people hire third-rate people, and first-rate people hire first-rate people. And that stuck with me, and it's never left me. And so when I'm hiring, I'm always thinking about what can this person do that we can't? What does this person bring to the team that we don't have? And the truth is, I'm always looking for people that I'm trying to find people that are smarter than me and can do things that I can't do, because the stronger people we bring in, the stronger our team becomes, the greater that the achievement gets elevated, and the more quickly we reach goals for all of our students. So it's about character traits, it's about work ethic, it's about believing that all students can succeed, and we're constantly looking to elevate, the skill set and the intelligence, collective intelligence of the team. We can teach you certain parts of the job, but I can't teach you to believe that all children are capable of success. So those are the keys for me.
Thank you. We'll stay with you and ask the next question. What creative ideas do you have about maintaining the school district's positive public image, and how will you make yourself more accessible to the public?
Yeah, sure. So, in terms of maintaining an image, it's about communicating successes, sharing successes of individual students, groups of students, faculty members, administrators, talking about our achievements, certainly in the context of where we still need to grow. In a practical sense, we use Facebook, we use Twitter, I use YouTube videos. I have open office hours. I had coffee with the principal and invited community members and families into the school during the school day so that they can see how the children behave, what the environment is like, how welcoming it is, and how safe it is, so that they have an understanding of what's happening to the children in their community. Being available for people in the evenings is really important. Making connections and building relationships with elected officials and with civic groups, and participating with those organizations wholeheartedly is really very, very important. And, I just think that if you love what you do, it shows. And if you have pride in the service, for me, this work has been a calling. It's, just about 30 years I'm in the field, and I haven't had a day where I've regretted it. We've had some challenges and some difficult situations, but I have not had one morning where I awoke to the feeling that I made a bad decision in my career choice. And I think that when you interact with people, they know that. And I think they see the pride you have in the students that you work for and the children you serve. And I think it's just about positive energy. And I think it's about this desire to constantly improve.
Linda, let me read the question again. So what creative ideas do you have about maintaining the school district's positive public image, and how will you make yourself more accessible to the public?
So I have found that through my tenure, 5 years as a superintendent, that it really is the way of life. We're superintendents in the grocery store. We're superintendents in church. I'm a superintendent if I'm in Walmart. And I think these are the unique opportunities to sell and talk about the image of the district. I know when I became superintendent where I am presently, I spent a lot of time just on weekends in the main street, just walking into AutoZone and into CVS, and just meeting those business owners and introducing myself and saying, hi, I'm Linda Iverson, I'm the new superintendent of schools, and talking about the vision and the image of the district that I knew about, because that's why I applied to work there, and selling what I knew, knowing that I was going to be meeting with them and inviting them in for meetings with me around my listening learning tour. But that image, I think, began with me first being out in the community and selling what I knew about the district, and more importantly, selling where I knew we were going, because I knew we had work to do. There were a lot of areas that just were broken, and I knew the community had lost its image or lost its faith about the community had lost its faith around the district. It just had no trust in it. And I needed to bring that back. I needed to rebuild that. So in creating that image was just me doing that nitty gritty, roll up your sleeves, going into those areas and joining a church around the corner and making sure that I was visible and that I was connecting with people. And that opened that door. And I would hear, well, we don't know that this is wrong. And I know we're going to be looking to work on these things. How can we be in touch with you? We exchange cards. And so that was the first way to, because the image was awful. And so I had to let everyone know that I met that, yes, I know where we are, but that's going to change. So that's what I think is the first thing you do. You have to be creative around how you get out and meet people. Second thing, what I did. So as we got people, parents to come into some of our buildings around parent conference week and all, the participation rates were very low. I had sent out a survey asking parents to give me some feedback around their perceptions in certain areas, and it was very low. And I just had to become creative around how I got that feedback and how I receive that information so that that image, I could find out what their image was they had and begin to work on it. So we did creative things like doing that learning tour, but when they would come in for conferences, we would around the room have all kinds of questions, that easy questions that on a Post-it note, they could say yes or no. And with that, I was able to get information around what they wanted to see in the image of the district. And a lot of that informed some of the focus groups and focus areas that became part of the strategic plan. But I too use robo text messages. My parents absolutely love it when I just text them. I use video messages to keep that image out there. I have an article every month in the Sun, the local paper. We have Twitter. They have email on our website. They can send me email messages. And of course, certainly when I get phone calls, I return them within 24 hours. And I'm always selling the district. And everywhere I go in my meetings with other superintendents, I'm representing the district. That is the role of the superintendent. So you look at any and every opportunity to do that. And I don't think you can do enough of it in there. And so that's something that's ongoing that I will continue to do.
So we'll stay with you. Their next question: how would you deal with the declining infrastructure in the Greenburgh Central School District?
So right now in my district, I've just finished renovating a building. And that is a concern across just in districts where we have these buildings and infrastructures that have been there forever. And we've just not stayed on top of them in terms of keeping up repairs. So the way it has been done is through the bond issue, where when I came to the district, there was a bond issue already that the gracious residents of the town had agreed for their taxes to be raised. And the district had issued a bond for about $10 million to renovate one of the buildings, and investors had invested in it. And the intent was to, of course, pay the bond with taxes from that the residents of the community had approved. Well, what ended up happening because of the financial state of the district that I talked about, the building never was renovated. They ended up having to use some of the money just to make ends meet. So when I got there, that was the state of that situation. So I had to take that and make sure we finished that building. So what I ended up doing is working on the issues first, putting a lot of systems and structures in place to just repair our finances. We just stopped spending money. Where we were in a deficit, with contractors and vendors, we started paying our bills. Where we had not returned paperwork and documentation to the federal government and to the state for reimbursement on transportation and access to Medicaid and access, all those things that brought money back in the district just had not been done. I did it. I went back and we began to collect taxes from residents that just weren't even being billed. And so I put systems and structures in place to just get off the watch list and to turn that fund balance around. Because of that, by year 2, that bond issue that I mentioned, because we had a positive fund balance that first year, we were able to borrow money to make up the bond money that was used. And then using that money, I was able to then, with the contractors and the architects, to go back to the drawing board. And we moved into that building in the fall of 1920. So I know for facilities management and all, a lot of ways is done because we just don't get enough state funding to do that sort of thing. It's always fallen on taxes, raising taxes and this bond issue. I know that before I would do that in Greenberg, because I do know there was a bond issue that did not pass. I think at this point, looking at, before you put a bond issue on the ballot, I mean, can we afford the debt service and can we collect the taxes to do it? A bond fails for a reason. Some want it, some don't. So I will begin from the beginning. We will have to come up with a minimal plan to all and go back and look at why it failed, and working along with the Board of Trustees, I'll come up with a plan with a small, this is how I would do it, the small committee of key stakeholders to begin to talk about the bond, the reasons it failed, and again, beginning to talk about how we're going to push that bond again. And so that's how I've done it. I've done a lot of that work around facilities, but the facilities, if you don't have it in your capital reserve money, a lot of times it is a bond issue on the ballot. But so that's what I would do.
So Dennis, the question, how would you deal with declining infrastructure in the Greenburgh Central School District?
Yes, I think this is a multi-pronged approach. I could tell you in my younger days, I spent time as a custodian. I spent time as a young man on a buildings and grounds crew in a school district. And I spent some time in my early 20s in the construction field. I have an appreciation for the effort that goes into that kind of work and what it takes to maintain things. So I would initially want to work with our internal people to make sure they have the support that they need. Make sure they have the supplies that they need, make sure that the management of those employees is efficient. I'm sure it is. So I think it's a multi-pronged, balancing it with what do we have internally? What is the community willing to support? Certainly identifying needs. I mean, to use a silly analogy, I hate to spend money on brakes on my car because you don't really have anything to show for it. But you know what? Brakes on the car are really necessary. So when it's time to replace the brake pads, that's not something you can put off, or you shouldn't put it off, obviously, right? So I took the time to visit the school district. I drove to every building in the surrounding community. I can see some areas that definitely need attention. I understand in the proposed budget, although it might be an early run, that there's, I forget if the number is 1.5 or 1.8 million that the board's discussing adding back into capital, the capital reserve. I would recommend that to the extent possible that they do that because, it's a kind of thing like you could pay us now or you can pay us later. And the more you put off these repairs, the bigger problems they turn into down the road. So I think it's a lot of what has already been said, but I also think it's making sure that we're really efficient with what we have in-house and that we're keeping up with those things and that the communication is really clear about what's necessary and what's not. I understand the district is working with BBS architects. We happen to have the same firm in the district I'm working with. So, hopefully BBS is going to give the district good advice about what are priorities and that the board and administrators will be able to act on that advice. Listen, there are some things you get to do as a superintendent that are great and get a lot of attention and are really the fun things. And then there are other decisions you have to make that aren't the, they don't get the excitement, but they're necessary. And I think you have to attack this from multiple directions. It's not just the bond. It's not just in-house. It's a smart combination of everything.
Excellent. Excellent. So we'll stay with you. The next question, what is your vision for a school district of excellence?
Yeah. You know what? I mean, my first vision includes substance. So there's a lot of buzzwords in education and there's a lot of PR that various school districts do. I know I've worked in some school districts where their reputation was better than their reality. And I've worked in some school districts where our reputation, where our reality was better than our reputation. I'd rather work in the latter, where we have programs that are of substance. And my vision is related to what I said earlier, that it's this somewhat obsessive focus on making sure that every student is prepared for his or her first day beyond high school. So to me, that means the appropriate social supports all the way through pre-K 12. It means the appropriate level of rigor. It means appropriate expectations. I've spent a great deal of time as a superintendent doing a lot of professional development around Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset. And I believe that that is absolutely foundational to any success that a school district could have. So a world-class school district, which Greenberg aspires to be, includes a culture of learners. If the adults aren't learners, then we can't expect the children to be learners. It's a culture of support. It's high expectations. It's a message of this is important. With the right effort, you can do it, and we will not give up on you. We espouse that message consistently and persistently where I work now. Greenberg is in my opinion, in a great spot with the International Baccalaureate program. The first class graduating this year, if I'm correct. But, for full disclosure, having an International Baccalaureate program that serves only a few and not many may be to the detriment of a school district like Greenberg. So we have to not only aspire to get as many students as possible taking that extremely rigorous program, but we have to take actions that get us there. In the district I work in now, 72% of our graduating seniors take at least one advanced placement or one International Baccalaureate class before graduation. I think that's a great number. It's not where I want it to be yet, but it's much higher than it's ever been. That's one indicator of a school district that I think is doing a great job. Another indicator is what percentage of our students are earning the Regents Diploma with advanced designation. That's a really important statistic to follow because we know that students who are successful in trigonometry in high school have greater success in college and thereafter. And it's basically making sure that there's the right plan for every graduate upon grade 12. And the right plan for some is going to be an Ivy League institution. The right plan for others is going to be career and tech ed. Two of my sons happen to be in the military. They're officers in the military. That was the right path for them. So in Greenberg, which has 120, 115, whatever the number may be, students in a graduating class, we should know every student by name, and we should know every student's plan as they enter 12th grade. So those are some of the components for me.
Linda, the question, what is your vision for a school district of excellence?
Yes, and I will echo some of the things that were said. I too believe it begins with a vision of high expectations and accountability and a shared vision of learning that all kids can learn. I too have read Carol Dweck's book about mindset, and it does require a mindset. That it is truly a mindset, a change of mind that we're going to do any and everything we can to ensure that all the needs of the kids are met. I tend to think that it begins at the early ages as well. I mean, that matriculation to high school and on into graduation is very important. But I think that excellence begins at the very low level. I am a proponent of just assuring that children are reading by grade 3, that we have programs in place to begin in that pipeline with our pre-K programs and the birth to 3 programs. And so that readiness and those foundational skills start that trajectory on for students. I think that that's where we must begin, so that as the child, again, continues to move through excellence and through the pipeline and the grades, that excellence is showing up in student achievement scores and on state tests at grades 3 and 8 where they're tested, so that along the way as school buildings and educators, but then with highly qualified teachers and principals, we're able to use that cycle of continuous improvement and make sure if there are concerns, we can go back and we have systems in place to show that at that young age, we are putting in strategies to help bridge that gap so they don't continue to move to the middle and high school and get there and not have it. I think that foundation around excellence starts there, and that we have a responsibility to send to the middle and high school teachers, readers. So it starts there at that level, and in all schools where there's professional development around high yield strategies, there's money aligned with that. There's just very solid curriculum alignment. All of those pieces are in place so that what is being taught is what's being assessed. So we aren't getting kids who are moving along and don't have those standards and have the skill set by the time they get to the high school and are taking a Regents exam and in the AP courses and cannot access the work. So I think those metrics are very important too. We knew excellent districts have advanced placement courses. They have a large percentage of their graduates in those classes is open to all. It's not a separate, unique set of kids, but there are no pipelines they go to in terms of tracking. Either you're going to be academic, vocational, business. It's open to all, and students have that agency around designing their own path to graduate, because as they move through the high school and ultimately graduate and take their place in this global community, they are on that track and in the best path for them. So I think that profile of what that graduate should look like starts early. And if we do it right, and we have graduates and increase that graduation rate, which 93 to 100%, I think then that's a sign of excellence, that we've done a great job. And what's more important, everyone's played a part. It's not a high school problem. It is a district concern. And that's clear, something I've had to, I articulate a lot to my staff around how every grade plays a part in where that graduate will be, what they're able to do, the foreign language, and the coursework that they take in the high school just doesn't happen if we're not doing what we need to do from elementary pre-K to elementary to middle to high school. So I will be looking at all those metrics ultimately, but I know to get that, I need to work hard on making sure that we're building that foundation along the way. And all of that then makes a world-class system to me. And we become a system or a district that's a leading district, because there's this research around districts that are leading and those that are learning, those that are losing. And we want to be in the quadrant where we're always leading and learning, using data on a continuum to see where we can always improve, so that we're giving kids what they need. So I think it's a combination of all of that as well. And that's how I envision it.
Well, first, as we come up to the first hour, I want to congratulate the community, because these are excellent questions. They really have come up with some excellent questions. So I congratulate you as you're watching. So, Linda, we'll stay with you. Okay. So our next question is: the country has gone through a racial justice reckoning. As superintendent, how will you bring the school community together to meet this moment?
Mm-hmm. So where I am now in my district, this is a very sensitive topic. It's very personal and people feel it. And my student population is 99% African American, and my faculty population is about 99% white. So through all the racial tensions that our country has witnessed on the national circuit, it kind of made it rose to the level of that there's some work we need to do around cultural competence. So that whole discussion around diversity, equity, and inclusion is just where we are right now. And as at the building level and at the district level, we have just begun to talk about what that looks like, and how with our perceptions of our knowledge of what we know, how we kind of translate that into how we work with students. I do have teachers who who have had some difficulty around seeing children for who they are, and not aware that they're coming from a space perhaps where there are some needs there for them to be exposed to some more cultural competence around instructional strategies, around strategies to affirm the underserved population, and looking even at discipline from not a punitive stance, but looking at discipline from a cultural lens, because some of the things that our children may demonstrate is not really being disrespectful if they, for example, are not giving you eye contact and sending kids out for disrespect. I mean, my Hispanic and other children from Africa and all in that building, that is a sign of respect. So what that divide has done is said that as educators, I mean, we do need to own and just admit that it's a challenge. We don't really know how to fix that. So I think that whole idea is to invest in a lot of professional development around that, because this now time to just raise that consciousness around how our own biases and perceptions impact how we interact with each other and with students in our buildings. So from that divide, it just sort of said to me, and from discussions with staff and all, it was an area that we just had to own. We need to do some work around. I mean, it's very, very sensitive, and it's you have, you have to be very careful because you have to build trust and people have to feel comfortable. But the bottom line is all kids are to be treated with respect. They're to be honored and to treat and to be able to deliver the highest quality of instruction to students. The people in front of them must see them for the quality and the skill and the brilliance that they bring to the table, regardless of their orientation, their ethnicity. So that's what the divide, I think, has done in terms of how, as a superintendent, I've tried to assure that and work with it within my district.
Okay, thank you very much. I actually had some internet problems on my side, so I don't know if it even noticed, but
No, I didn't.
yeah, we've had some power outages here, so good. Okay. All right, Dennis, let me ask you the same question. So the country has gone through a racial justice reckoning. As superintendent, how will you bring the school community together to meet this moment?
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Caldwell, the first thing I could tell you is I didn't notice you had internet problems because Linda had my rapt attention. It was, I think she really hit the nail on the head with her response to that. I would add that first of all, the images that we see across the country are absolutely heartbreaking, and I think in many cases disgraceful, and we have to figure out how to stop that, change that, and stop that. Some of the things I've done as a building principal and as a superintendent is one building I served in, we enrolled our faculty in something that's was called LICE, which was the Long Island Consortium for Equity and Excellence. And it was work that came out of the University of Pennsylvania. And it was a group of school districts in Nassau County that came together to get professional development for our teachers around things like cultural proficiency and understanding, some of the things that were already said, that, lack of eye contact, one culture views it as disrespectful and another culture views it as a sign of respect. It's important for people to understand those things. It's important to understand microaggressions, and that was also some of the professional development that we participated in. As the superintendent, I collaborated with an organization known as Research for Better Teaching, and we mandated a 6-day course for more than half of our faculty entitled The Skillful Teacher. And nearly 2 days of that course is focused on cultural proficiency and making sure that our educators can look internally and examine any biases they may have internally, and then develop the ability to discard the biases that contribute to debilitating beliefs for students and hold on to the thoughts and feelings that enable students. It's really a vexing problem, and it's the kind of challenge that will be there, and it's something that requires persistence and consistency. The professional development is really, really key. The access to the rigorous courses for all of the students is crucial. Making sure that students get all the supports that they need. Some examples of that is calling home in the native language. Some examples of that is, I've been taped to a wall and sat in the dunk tank to raise money so that we could take children away on our college visitations. Because if you organize a trip like I've done in the past, where we take our entire 8th grade away for a 3-day visit to Philadelphia to see 4 colleges, because we're working on closing achievement gaps. You can't close achievement gaps until you close aspiration gaps. So one of the ways we close those aspiration gaps is bringing children to these campuses, and they come from families where nobody's ever been to a college or mentioned college. So therefore, they don't aspire to it. And that leads to these other problems that we see in society. And it doesn't do us any good to bring only the children that can already afford it. So it's a whole, again, there's nothing in education that's just one program solves it. There's never one simple solution. It always requires a collective effort. It requires persistence. It requires consistency, and it requires messaging from the top as to what won't be tolerated. And what won't be tolerated is mistreatment, disrespect, and what won't be tolerated is having debilitating beliefs. And making sure that everybody who comes to work in those schools, whether it's our clerical staff, custodial staff, security staff, faculty, administration, that everybody maintains the dignity of all of the students, and everybody has high expectations for those students. You're muted again.
We'll say that. So we'll stay with you again. What do you consider your greatest achievement in your professional life to date?
Yeah, gosh, I love this question because it makes you smile a little bit and it gives you a warm feeling, right? I just touched upon it briefly. Well, I was a principal of a high school that had the biggest socioeconomic gap I had ever experienced to that point. We had the wealthiest of the wealthy in our schools, and we had children that were coming from extreme poverty. In our case, it was children of immigrants, and the children often had interrupted formal education, and it was quite a challenge. And people talked about achievement, close the achievement gap. And I mentioned a moment ago that you can't close an achievement gap before you close an aspiration gap. And so one of the things that I created was a college awareness program in our high school. I had mentioned earlier it was grades 7 through 12. And I created this program where every year we took the entire 8th grade on a 3-day field trip to Philadelphia. We visited the University of Pennsylvania, we visited Villanova, we visited Ursinus College, we visited Temple University, we visited Haverford. The colleges rotated, but the University of Pennsylvania was always the foundation school. At each of the visits, the children received an admissions presentation and a guided campus tour. And these things were crucial because there were students on this trip that, like I said earlier, nobody ever talked to them about college. And when they returned to our school district after the trip, we had a run on our counseling center. They wanted to drop study halls. They wanted to enroll in honors classes for 9th grade. They understood directly from admissions representatives that this is what it takes to come to this college or university. And the students were on the campus in real time. For the first time in their lives, they could envision themselves reaching the next level. That aspiration gap slammed shut. The program was so successful that we recreated it in the 10th grade, and we took our entire 10th grade away for 5 days. Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, where we visited 11 colleges or universities. And it had the same effect. So on a broader scale, in 2 different school districts, I was able to bring the student achievement to a point where we were just a pedestrian school district to where we were ranked nationally and tops in New York State. On a more drilled down personal level, my biggest achievement, or what I'm most proud of, is that I have literally been able to change the life trajectories of students through programs like that, through things like detracking a mathematics program, and through decisions about limiting tracks in our social studies and English curricula. The high school in the district I work in now, we're to the point where every student in the building chooses either between International Baccalaureate English or College Freshman English in 12th grade because we've eliminated tracks. We've continued to deliver the message that this is important. With the right effort, you can do it. We won't give up on you. And there's more, but in short, the thing that makes me smile the most is to think back on students that didn't know where they were going, didn't have aspirations that met their potential, close those aspiration gaps, change their life trajectories, put your head on a pillow knowing that you were given this opportunity to make a difference, and you did. That's the best I could answer that one.
Thank you. Thank you. Linda, let me ask the same one. What do you consider your greatest achievement in your professional life to date?
Yes. So Dr. Caldwell, I started constructing my narrative about who I am and where I want to go and who I want to be. I think as a little girl born into poverty to a single mom, living and raised in the inner city projects of Washington, D.C., I'm very aware that there's something different about me. I didn't seem to have the same clothes everyone else had. In school, everyone always had lunch money, and little did many people even know many days didn't have lunch, sometimes so embarrassed by it. I would stay in the girls' bathroom stall, just during lunch. And also many nights not going to bed even without dinner. So growing up very poor, and so my mom, though being a single mom, having me her senior year in high school, had to leave to do that. But she went back to school, and that very same year after having me, and was valedictorian of her class. So that seed around education, I think, is what she planted intrinsically in me, because I love school. I did well in school. And I remembered at a very young age, and I and having that motivation and being ignited to think and want to do better. My mom did better, and knowing that I could rise above this poverty, and that I was so set and bent on going to school and becoming an educator and coming back to diverse urban districts like where I attended, where I wish my teachers knew I was hungry some days, where there was no free reduced lunch then. And so if you didn't have lunch money and didn't bring food to eat, I didn't eat. And decided that would be my passion. And here I sit here now today, over 32 years of experience as a teacher in Washington, D.C. public schools, and before becoming a department chair, then an assistant principal in these Cleveland City schools, over a comprehensive high school of over 2,500 students, both academic vocational programming, and before moving into my first principalship as a middle school principal in East Hartford, Connecticut, where there I restructured the teaming structure like most middle schools are designed, and to be more inclusive of special education. That was the best, one of my accomplishments there, because it was very segregated there, and they saw special education as that wing down the hall. I wiped that out, and we created teams where special education was included. And before moving to my elementary level, where I served as an elementary principal for over 13 years. And it was during that experience, because of this lens of equity that I just began to acquire, we were able to, around that AYP period on our state testing, to meet all the targets in every subgroup. And I think that came from that lens of my narrative about all kids can learn, and those gaps of those undeserved kids who were just coming to me with the gaps in learning and not having the things I didn't have as a student. I was able to cultivate a talent and a mindset and a culture in that my building as a principal, where we started again addressing all needs of kids. And then moving on to my central office experience as a supervisor, and then into Baltimore City schools, where 85,000 students, over 200 schools. By this time, I'm supervising schools, and I have principals under my leadership. And again, Baltimore City, urban district, a lot of poverty, a lot of all the variables and obstacles that impact why kids can't access coming to school. They don't have clothes. They didn't have food. Parents had to work. I had to watch my brother and sister. All of those things are what was in my population of schools. And I was very proud with this whole vision and the same approach to be able, with my schools and working with my principals, out of my schools, every year when the superintendent would honor principals who were doing a great job, I had half my network of schools and my principals who were deemed transformational. And many of them now are aspiring superintendents, are in the pipeline now to mentor other principals. So I really see that as an accomplishment. And then moving on to my seat where I am now, I described the district that I inherited. And I took that job with the full knowledge of all the problems. And where we sit now in my 5 years, we have had a positive, as I said, fund balance since my first year there. We've paid all our debts. The financial watch list, the State Department is, and just this past week talking to them, they say to me, you know, we've never had a district come off the watch list. We don't even know how to do it, but we've done so well that we're not being sanctioned anymore. The image of my district is different. My enrollment is up. I'm now recruiting very good talent. And so the district is on the trajectory to do better. I see all of those accomplishments, and I think they all were motivated by that little girl who began this work and developed this passion and kept this passion and has just devoted her life to giving that back. And so it's a combination of a career that I think I just celebrate.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question, Linda, we'll give this one to you. What are some specific strategies that you would use to engage community members who do not have children currently in the Greenburgh Central Schools?
Mm-hmm. And that's very common. We have board members on my board who don't have children in the school and are just as very committed, very concerned, very invested. So I think we don't forget them. I think we need to recognize that everyone in our community, all the families in our community do not have children, but they are a vital part of the community. Their taxes are coming to our district, and they're just as important in terms of being included in the work. So what I've done so far with some of the work and working with the community and those and parents who don't have kids, a lot of them come to my board meetings. A lot of them are involved in some of my stakeholder groups. I have a stakeholder list of persons who are have a vested interest in the district, and they are invited in a lot to meet with me around our strategic plan. When we're beginning to plan that, we have to do a comprehensive plan for the state that's separate from the strategic plan. And in both of those processes, you need to have community involvement. So many of the persons from the community who don't have children serve on those committees. They meet with me, and they are able to give me, from their perspective, feedback around where they see the needs of the district are, because they are the people who are coming from the community and have that history and that background. And I'm not from that area, so I learn a lot from them, and they love it. They come in and they're involved in my Read to America program. Dr. Seuss is coming up now. A lot of them are coming in. They come in every year and read to the students. We also have many of them in our tutoring. We are offering additional support to students in second grade around reading. We have a program, OASIS program, that's filled with nothing but community retirees who many don't have children anymore in the system, but they're giving back to the community, and they absolutely love it. So I always reach out to them and include them and ensure them they're welcome in my system, and as any opportunity I can, they're part of the process. Right now, we're beginning to look at a partnership we're forming, and I've developed some subcommittees, and many of them are on these committees around social climate, around student enrollment, around transition, big buckets that we're working on. Many of them right to this day are sitting on those programs and on those committees. So in many ways, I've involved them.
I'll move to you, Dennis, asking the same question. What are some of the specific strategies that you would use to engage community members who do not have children currently in Greenburgh Central Schools?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what has already been said. It's just about outreach and engagement, and it's about being inviting. When I was the principal of Oyster Bay High School, I sent a letter out to every resident in the school district, whether they had children or not, inviting them to join me for coffee with the principal. I invited, or I offered 7 or 8 different opportunities to join us. Some opportunities were 7 a.m. in the morning or 7:30, just as our school day was beginning, thinking that maybe somebody could come join us for a half hour, 45 minutes before work. Some of them were in the middle of the day, thinking if people work locally, they could take their lunch hour and come spend time with us. Some of them were in the afternoon, maybe people could knock off of work a little bit early and have the opportunity. And then, of course, there were evening times. The only drawback to the evening time slots was that if you had to come in the evening, you couldn't see the school in operation. And I think transparency is crucial. I think constant invitations are crucial. I think it's really important to embrace your critics. It's something I do on a regular basis. So if we have community members that think we're not up to standards, we're not doing enough, then those are the people I almost want to meet with first, because I want to hear from them directly. I want to know exactly where you think we're falling down. I mentioned earlier, as a superintendent of schools, that I have open office hours, and I send that notice out to everybody who lives in the community. And I think that having the open invitation is crucial. I think being involved in Rotary, and I think visiting, volunteer fire departments, and I think visiting all the different religious organizations is really key to building those relationships with community members, and helping people understand that first and foremost, we have 1,600 students we want to serve, but we can't do that without the support of the entire community. And it's important for the school district to be a good partner to the community members, and it's important for the community members to support the school district. And we have to just build this synergy and get this powerful synergy going so that we can make Greenburgh the best school district on the planet.
Well, thank you. The next question we'll keep with you, Dennis. How will you prepare students for the jobs of tomorrow?
Yeah, that's a great question. What are the jobs of tomorrow, right? That's the challenge, is that we can't really predict them. One of the things we do right now is we have a heavy investment in coding, beginning in our elementary schools, all the way through AP Computer Science in the high school. We have in the time that I've been superintendent of Oyster Bay High School, we've increased by almost 30% the percentage of students that are earning advanced Regis diplomas. We've increased the percentage of students that are taking AP and International Baccalaureate classes, and we've increased the percentage of students that are going to four-year colleges. But at the same time, we've doubled the number of students that are taking advantage of career and tech ed programs in BOCES. And that's where really exciting stuff is happening for students. We celebrate at board meetings students who have chosen to pursue careers in welding, electrical. We have internships. We happen to be fortunate in the district I live in to be within the second largest industrial park in the nation. And we seek out a lot of opportunities with some of the businesses in that industrial park. The most prominent one is some of those businesses sponsor our robotics team. I mean, the careers of the future are certainly in medicine. They're certainly in coding and computer programming. I mean, those are two obvious ones. It's just about making sure that every student has involvement in things. I don't want to be repetitive, but coding is a really good example, because it's going to be really important in the future for everybody to even have just a general understanding of that type of work. So it's things along those lines.
Excellent. Linda, the same question. How will you prepare students for the jobs of tomorrow?
Yes. Being a parent of a millennial who's just sharp she can be and has skills to be able to navigate the workforce, I think that's what's motivated school systems and districts to really work on those college career readiness standards, because that profile of the graduate must, as we heard, also must include those academic skills that they need, the diploma around academics and standards and mastery on tests in the regions as well. But the graduate today must have an integration of not just that, I think they also need those critical thinking. We have to make sure they lead with the 4 C's, that they're able to in the workforce to communicate. So the academic knowledge is not enough if you can't articulate and communicate it on the job. Be able to synthesize, think critically, be creative. The workforce is looking for, they no longer looking or is even impressed with just the diploma, the academic diploma. They're looking for graduates who can, with knowledge, but can take that knowledge and collaborate in an environment with other professionals and can work in teams, as I say, can think critically, can communicate frequently and fluently, and can just be a part of a discourse of learning ongoingly. The environments are different now. The environments where you're working now, you have to have the skill set around technology to be able to manipulate it, also be able to articulate the academic pieces of how it can be used in the vision of the organization to move the vision forward. So that's how they must lead. That's the profile that we must prepare our graduates on those career readiness index and standards we have to ensure that they're getting those exposures to those things during their time in school, some simulated experiences where they are able to go out and do internships and be on the job and learn just by doing. We have to also make sure they are doing the work around collecting artifacts around the standards that they're required to have, so that there's a folder and profile and a portfolio of things they can take to the job to say, this is what I did while I'm in high school. We also got to get them more into the dual enrollment, I think, programs, where they're taking level school courses in high school that can also service them to get credit while they're in college. So that dual piece then helps them in terms of when they graduate. So I just don't think it's just academic. I think what the workforce is looking for now is more of a global person, a global graduate who has both. And I think as a school system and as school districts, we have to be able to integrate the two, so that that profile of that graduate, when they do walk across the stage, they are able to land a job because they come with a repertoire skills around not only what they know, but what they can do with that knowledge. So the combination and integration of the two is what we must do to prepare them for the jobs.
Okay, Linda, we'll stay with you. What do you see as the district's top 3 biggest challenges moving forward? And what skill sets or traits do you bring to the job to address these challenges?
So I saw the strategic plan, and and the focus areas. And I don't know if they were listed in order. I mean, there were 5. I don't know if one is the most important, but I saw a focus area around facilities, and that was a question you had earlier. I saw a focus area around engagement. I saw a focus area around that alignment of curriculum, instruction, and assessment. I saw a focus area around retaining great talent, all the areas we've talked about tonight. And as a superintendent, I've had direct experience in all of those areas. Around facilities, I did describe how I was able to get a building to fruition from where there was a failed bond to where now that building's been open. We've opened that building in 1920 school year, brand new state-of-the-art teaching materials and equipment and desk, flexible instructional seating, LED lighting, secure lighting, secure systems in the front of the building, new windows. It is state-of-the-art. It's absolutely beautiful, and it's going to support learning in another way. So I've had work around facilities, and so that's where I know the district is. And so I bring that skill set to that goal and that focus area. Definitely around that alignment of curriculum. In my district now, when I got there, as I think I mentioned, instruction was very low. Achievement was really low. And so, but what I realized as I was in classes and observing and just doing informal walkthroughs, what was being taught was not what was being assessed. Students were making A's on report cards and couldn't even read. So there was work to align the curriculum to the standards, the PA's, the Common Core standards, and the ones that adopted in Pennsylvania. And then once we did some work around that, then we were able to align assessments. And that was the work of teachers. I gave them a stipend over the summer. We had representatives from all the grades, and it was rolling up the sleeves and looking at those standards and prioritizing what that work should look like and aligning those assessments with it. And where we are now with that is that we have common assessments on all of the common assessments built by teachers in our accountability system, as well as we've moved now to a standards-based report card. So I have very direct experience on that focus area. The focus area that you mentioned around retaining talent. So in my district now, I wanted to attract the very best. I think I mentioned and talked a lot about organizational capacity. I definitely do believe we must have the right people in the seats. And so I think I've raised the rigor around what we look for in candidates and job descriptions. So I did a lot of work around revising job descriptions, going through them and looking at the skill set, the essential skills and competencies, and assuring that the job description articulated what we needed. So when people applied, we got people with those skill sets. So I've worked on that, as well as the interview process. That process includes an assessment. Most of them, when they walk in, they have a little task they must perform or do. The first 30 minutes, they walk in an interview with that task, and we have an opportunity to discuss. They present it to the group, and then we get into the interview. So I've raised the rigor around how we recruit and retain, as well as my human resource person is doing a lot more getting out to the universities and the colleges and visiting those graduates that are coming out, because my focus in my district right now is making sure we get the very best, that we do also attract some professionals of color. And so I have a direct experience in those 3 focus areas as well. And the engagement I did speak to, but yes, I do feel my skill set matches their needs of the district and where you are. And with the strategic plan ending this June, I see myself as the candidate to come in and to take that baton and find out where we are on those, and then revamp that to continue to be build on those strengths and weaknesses.
Thank you. Dennis, what do you see as our district's top 3 biggest challenges moving forward? And what skill sets or traits do you bring to the job to address these challenges?
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, Greenberg is like, plenty of other school districts across New York State. And in some ways, it's very, very unique. So for me, I think the challenges are in buckets. I kind of have 3 different buckets for what I perceive thus far to be the challenges. I think budget, finances, and infrastructure is one challenge. So, I think the budget's dependent to a certain degree on state aid, and we know how unpredictable and unsteady that is. Being able to have the really difficult but candid and transparent conversations regarding budget and planning and maintaining financial strength of the district and prudent use of reserves are areas that I have experience as having done this job for 5 years already. I think another bucket would be student experiences and community's satisfaction with the school district. I think my guess, based on my visit to the area and looking at achievement data, is that students in the district, I think, have very different experiences based on income levels maybe, and based on, like I mentioned earlier, aspiration gaps. And I think that there's probably a difference of opinion among community members as to the success and effectiveness of the school district. I think it's really, really important to address those issues. And one of the strengths I have is that I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm a consensus builder. I would say I'm an agreement builder. And I think I've had some success at getting community members, faculty members, parents, to all reach agreement on what we need to accomplish and why these goals are worthy and necessary. As an outsider looking in, I think that one possibility of a challenge is a term that's initiative overload. There seems to be a lot happening in the school district, and not having had the opportunity to work in the school district, I'm not sure which initiatives are effective so far and which ones aren't paying the dividends that we had hoped that they would. So I think those are the 3 areas. And I have a resume that's quite lengthy. I think that I have a record of instructional leadership has been a hallmark of my career. I was a classroom teacher for myself for almost 10 years. I spent a great deal of time studying instruction, learning how to support teachers, spend immeasurable amounts of time in classrooms, learning from teachers. So attacking it from that angle in terms of making sure all students have a similar experience and get the same opportunities, I think is really important. Being able to kind of cut through the smoke and determine, what programs are paying the dividends that we expected and have been effective. So, I think it's those 3 areas, and I think that I have a background or a record of achievement that shows I've been able to address those things over time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll keep the question with you. So our next question is, our most recent school bond was defeated by a margin of 2-1. It was evident that certain groups in the community do not wish to vote yes on bond issues. What will you do to convince the residents of the district that a school bond is in their best interest?
Well, I think it's about, first of all, communication. I've had the good fortune of being part in the district I work in. We just 2 years ago successfully passed a bond, and that work will be beginning soon. And in the district where I was principal, in the time I was there, we passed 2 pretty ambitious bonds. And what I've learned is that it's about communication far in advance. And by communication, I don't really mean just PR and trying to convince people, but it's about explaining to people the why. And I think that it's important to bring people in to see the facilities, to let people see which aspects of the district may have deteriorated to the point where this bond is essential, which aspects of the district maybe you don't need a bond for, but you can do out of some capital reserves and so on. But it's understandable why people don't want to continue to see their property taxes go up. But at the same time, property values are directly linked to the success of a school district and to the facilities of a school district. So those are all really important factors. The biggest thing about that stuff is the why and getting everybody to understand it. It's a big challenge, and I understand why people don't want to necessarily pass bonds, especially if they think that finances haven't been managed well leading up to the need for the bond. So sometimes as ambitious, you have to balance a sense of urgency with what you can accomplish. And sometimes they're not close, that sense of urgency with what you can accomplish, or sometimes there's a distance between them. So it's really about listening to all your constituents, and sometimes you have to trim down the bond. Sometimes you have to delay it and build more support for it, and just continue to work at it.
Linda,
Yeah.
I'll read the question again. Our most recent school bond was defeated by a margin of 2-1. It was evident that certain segments of the community do not wish to vote yes on bond issues. What will you do to convince the residents of the district that a school bond is in their best interest?
Yes. And I would echo a lot that was said. I do believe that up front, there's that front end before the bond even gets on the ballot is that communication and that with community members and getting out into the community. I think the Board of Trustees and the Superintendent, they're the driving force behind the bond and those engagements and getting and connecting to why this bond is important. I do think when a bond fails, it fails for a reason. And because you have some who want it and some don't. So I don't think the bond campaign that you use is always the very same. I think from the one that's failed, we learn why it failed. We know clearly some wanted and some didn't, but the reasons why it did. And I think you then build a plan to capitalize on that. But that communication starts early. A lot of districts I've worked in, they've had bonds on the ballot. And I think the communication maybe started 2 months before the November vote. And I just think it's a very ongoing, slow process, and you start communicating early. Our buildings are failing. We are having, and just what those concerns are. You invite them in to see it, and you build the case around why this is important and why the issue of a bond and raising their taxes, it will help fix that, but also the return to them in terms of the increase in property value with a brand new building in the community definitely increases that property value and increases the value of their homes. You have to connect it to why it's important for the school, but how it also helps them, because people in the community I do believe will want to support schools, especially in districts where there's one high school like we have here. I mean, that high school is the central focal point of the community. That's where everyone comes for the football games, for the everyone just has this, the pride of the high school. And so they want to support the district. So you have to, but they want to feel respected. They want input. And I think you don't do this with any kind of a motive just to get their vote. This building this collaboration and this communication. As a superintendent, if you have it already, you should have it way before the bond, so that when you approach the community and those who voted against it and those who just don't want it, they know you're coming from a space of really honesty, being honest and truthful, and that you really are thinking about what's best, not just for the district, but also best for them. So I would build a lot of time in that campaign for that. And then I think I mentioned earlier, I think my focus would be to put together a small committee, not too many, because I think large committees can't reach consensus or it's harder. But you have stakeholders from the community. You invite some of those naysayers or those who are just on the fence maybe to be part of that process, be part of the committee to talk about the timing. When is a good time to do this? Because a bond, when you think about a bond on the ballot, I think before you talk about it, you have to know, can we really afford this debt? Right now we have a 4% debt service in my district, but can we afford it? And can tax holders, can they afford to pay for it? Because that's who's paying for the bond. And those are transparent conversations you have in building that communication on that campaign. And then, so that committee would work on what that timing would be, what the campaigning would be, and what that funding will be. I agree with the point made that when a bond fails, when you go back to the drawing board, you do have to develop a plan now that's amenable to everyone. And in doing that, you may have to back off some of the things in the bond. You may have to scale back and come back with how we can do some now and what we can do later over time. So you don't come back with the very same bond. That's what I mean by no bond campaign is the same. And I think you get out there and you campaign. And that's the job of the superintendent with the board of trustees through, I think, surveys, through email, through things mailed to the home, messages. There's not enough you can do to just sell the bond and the reasons behind it. To me, it's just like presenting the budget, especially when you're coming before the board and you're having to cut some things in the budget or you're having to put some more money here. The way you have to justify why you have to do that is through showing the benefits to the students, the benefits to the district, and what I like was said, if we don't do this, what will happen? So that is a transparency piece, yes, you have to put out there, but you're gentle. You don't shove it down anyone's throat, and you even have to know when to back off of a bond. That timing is important. And if it's not the right time, you just don't force it. And you go back and look to see where your reserve can possibly do some of the work until you can come back at a different time. Because the timing is real important too when people are really, when the community is open to wanting to have their taxes raised, because they're the ones footing the bill. And I think they certainly should be the ones driving that decision, whether we even put that bond on the ballot. So that's how I would approach it. But the plan should be amenable to all. And if that's not there, we just don't move forward and we try to look at other alternatives.
Okay, Linda, we'll stay with you. The next question is, what are your plans to include local nonprofits, especially in underserved areas as it pertains to early education and after-school involvement?
So I would get to know who they are. I hope to, with my Listen and Learning tour, to find out just where these nonprofits are, who these stakeholders are, and make an attempt to begin to meet with them, just introducing myself, again, building that relationship. I don't think that's something I need to take some time to formulate that, get them to get to know me. And just formulate a relationship around where the vision around the district, and then hopefully get them to buy in. So that's how I would begin. I mean, I have several nonprofits working with my school system now, and that's how I approached it. There are so many now that they even are calling me to want to be a part of it. So I would start with looking at those nonprofits that way, just building that relationship and finding out through contact and through working with the Board of Trustees just who they are. What I do with my principals now, because that nonprofit and community piece is so important, we do something called political mapping, where we just sort of spend some time and we're trying to identify who are those people we need to be in touch with, those nonprofits and stakeholders, and we just start mapping it out. We put the students in a circle in the middle, and then we have the spokes on the wheel, which is my analogy, I know, all around, and on every spoke are those major constituents and parts of the bucket. And there are the stakeholders and the nonprofits are there. And so it keeps us reminding that they are important. And then we talk, well, who are they? And with the help of the Board of Trustees being new to the state, I would need that information, lean on them heavily to find out just where those nonprofits are located, who they are, and make that initial contact.
Thank you very much. Dennis, the same question. What are your plans to include local nonprofits, especially in underserved areas, as it pertains to early education and after-school involvement?
Yeah, thank you. I would begin with elected officials, reaching out immediately to county legislators and asking if I could visit their office or if they'd like to come to the district to meet me. I would work with state senators and assembly people. I think that they probably have a really good idea who these nonprofits may be. I think elected officials are really good connectors, and I would have to rely on them initially to help me make some connections. And then, I believe it would build from there with meetings with the leaders of the nonprofits and the businesses that are in town, and just kind of beginning to discuss with them, how do we get the synergy going and how do we help each other? So, what relationship can we have with them that our older students can help their organizations, and in turn, they can help our younger students and families. So it's kind of a short answer, but I think that would be my starting point.
Okay, thank you. We'll stay with you. The next question. The district prioritizes social emotional learning. How will you engage the district in positive mental health practices?
Sure. Well, I mean, this question can't be more timely given what's happening with the pandemic. I was so thrilled, by the way, to see on Dr. Chase's Twitter feed that 5 Woodlands Middle School, High School young ladies were interviewed by Savannah Guthrie. I was excited to see the interview, and I was really impressed with how articulate the girls were and how candid they were about their feelings. And I think that I think their interview perfectly articulated what students are facing today. They're feeling isolated, they're feeling stressed, they're feeling anxiety. Their families are dealing with financial challenges. Sadly, they're dealing with death in the family as a result of COVID-19. So even before the pandemic, social emotional literacy or paying attention to children's social and emotional needs was crucial. And I think it's just multiplied or magnified following the emergence of COVID-19. So, again, this is a question where there's not just one program that's the answer. It's really a multi-pronged attack. So in the district I work in right now, we initiated a program called Search Inside Yourself, which was a professional development program for our faculty and staff. And it was all about mindfulness. And it really caught on like wildfire. And we had our faculty turnkey training. We had people offering mindfulness training sessions after school. We certainly focused on it on superintendent conference days. So that's really, really key. We have programs in our school like Choose Love. In Oyster Bay High School, I brought a program in called Challenge Day, which was possibly the most powerful social emotional program I've ever been part of. And Greenburgh is a school district that's the perfect size for a program like Challenge Day. And what Challenge Day does is explain to the students that everybody's like an iceberg, and the tip of our iceberg is, our ego, the appearance, what we want people to think we are. But beneath the iceberg is our anxiety, our worry, our insecurities, our frail health. So, again, my resume is replete with programs like Raceless Challenge, Challenge Day, Choose Love, Search Inside Yourself, and basically just attending to this constantly at all levels and all different ways. It's really, really crucial. Emotional well-being of the students is really the foundation upon which all the other things have to be built.
Linda, we'll ask you the same question. The district prioritizes social emotional learning. How will you engage the district in positive mental health practices?
So I know right now, I think professional development is going to be the way to go. I mean, this pandemic has really inferred that we do need to do some work around that when we go back into the building full in person, when we resume school. I know they're hybrid here. My district, we're remote, but the period of isolation, the loneliness, the depression that a lot of our adults as well as students maybe have experienced, just won't go away. We'll never be the same. We can't do things the same. And I think that's just where we are as educators right now at the table discussing how do we reacclimate and get our students back to where they were, with this piece of the pandemic. I mean, I think in general, students across the nation have done very well. I mean, kids are very tenacious, they're very resilient, they bounce back. But yes, they will need support as well as some of our adults. So I know while during this pandemic, we've done a lot of work around training and trauma-informed care with our faculty, so they'll be able to even recognize symptoms and signs when students are back in the building, and then have strategies to address it. So heading that off, I knew that would be an area we would need to focus on or just be prepared for. You don't know what you're going to see. We're learning about it. We don't all have the answer there. We're not all good at it. To just be very transparent. I think we're just at the table now talking around how are we going to address it, because we know we as adults how we felt about it. So professional development will be one way to just begin to talk about how do we address our students coming back who've been isolated, not with their peers, no socialization, needs maybe not being met. I mean, some schools provided lunch, some didn't. So we don't even know if those needs were met. How do we do that? And I think it begins at that conversation there. In terms of a short answer, we just have to start with, as adults, learning how to address those needs. I don't think we have a skill set right now around how to handle it, because all of this is new to all of us.
Thank you. The next question will go to you, Linda. What leadership style would you say best represents you?
Mm-hmm. So I talked a little bit about that. I'm one of these people, I think, who's determined. I've just been, because of my past, just very driven. I like to accomplish things. I'm very organized, and I think with me being so driven like that in my lifetime, it sometimes is crossed over into and I don't think this is a good trait, but it's something I always work on, because I recognize this about myself. When you don't have, and then when you accomplish and you overcome obstacles, and you start showing some signs of success, you're afraid of losing it, and so you can become sort of a perfectionist. And I don't want to be that person. So I've worked hard on my style to not model perfection, but model high expectations and accountability in everything I do, but recognizing that everyone needs support to get there and valuing what everyone brings to the table. So I try to lead with it by example. I think leadership is from the top down. And I think I try to model my style of leadership in my actions, in my conversations, always with everyone, so that they see I walk the walk and I talk the talk, and that my actions match my beliefs. My style is to lead with integrity and honesty and transparency and confidentiality, and again to model that in in all the facets of the organization and all the people I work with. So that's who I am. That's who I've been, and it's helped, I think, in that I can talk to people in my career path from when I was a teacher that I still know. If you talk to any of them, they would probably describe me as that way: a hard worker, but fair, firm, and consistent, and value people, very sensitive around things, too sensitive, some people say, because there are times that others are being insensitive when I am the one, and I'm trying to model sensitivity, but sensitive to the point where I just care about people and their needs, and I've really learned to put that first in my work. I know this job of the superintendent is it's complex. It has a lot of demands on you. And so I'm looking to join a district where I can make it my home and join a team of professionals where I feel I can contribute and learn as much from them as I bring to the table. I think together we could work together to move the district to be the world-class system that Greensburg wants to be. And I think with that collaborative style of leadership, being distributive and understanding and being able to pull people in, it would match where they are.
Well, thank you so much. Dennis, what leadership style would you say best represents you?
This is another question that I love. I would say inclusive. And a long time ago, when I became building principal, I learned from the superintendent. He said to me, "Best idea wins." It doesn't have to be my idea, Dennis. It has to be the best idea. And that's the culture that I've cultivated and fostered and sustained in my leadership posts, is being able to speak passionately about your views and your ideas. And regardless of my title or your title or her title or his title, we're in the room together, we're on the team together, and we have to be able to push back and poke holes, and the best idea has to win, because that's how you make the organization better. So I would say it's inclusive. I would certainly say it's collaborative. My goal, no matter who I'm interacting with, whether it's students, custodial, clerical, teachers, other administrators, is to empower people and to give them the confidence to make decisions. I want a leadership team that has a bias toward action. When they're faced with a situation, if they need to make a decision and we don't have the opportunity to discuss it, I need them to know that we've already brainstormed this type of a thing, and they know exactly what we want for the organization, because we've been at the table passionately kind of hammering away at each other as to what is the best idea and why. I think it's really important to certainly, Linda mentioned integrity, and that's absolutely crucial. You have to be a leader of integrity. But I think it's important to, as a leader, make sure that the culture you lead is one of, if better is possible, good is not enough. And I think it's really important for everybody in your organization to understand you don't have to be bad to get better. My leadership style is inclusive. I want to help people get better. I want to support people. Over the course of my 30+ year career, I've made plenty of mistakes, and I often share those mistakes with others so they can learn from them and capitalize on my mistakes. And that's how you empower people. You give them the ability to take on leadership roles and take their ideas and run with them. So again, at the risk of being repetitive, I think it's inclusive, it's collaborative, and it's a best idea wins leadership style.
Thank you. The next question to you, Dennis. How do you plan to improve transparency and communication in the district?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of in improving communication, we've both probably touched on that a lot. It's all the different social media platforms, it's the meetings, it's the invitations, it's the phone calls, It's everything. And it's a couple of other factors too. It's first, it's omnipresence. In any leadership role I've ever had, I'm omnipresent. In fact, people often ask, do you ever go home? I don't think there's any other way to be a leader in a school district or the principal of a building or an important leadership level within a district. So omnipresence, transparency is key. I never sweep anything under the carpet. If we get a phone call from a parent who has a complaint, if I determine that the parent is correct and there's merit to his or her complaint, I say so. And then I tell the parent how I think I can help or what steps I think we could take to fix it. I often explain, I'm sorry, I can't undo the experience you had, but we can certainly make it better going forward. It's just about honesty and transparency and explaining to any person you interact with, this is where we are, this is why, this is where we're headed, this is why we're headed there, this is how I think we can get there. And it's basically understanding that people are human and systems are made of people. So there might be times where there's mistakes made. It goes back to something I said earlier, students first, pure intentions, best effort. If the community understands where your heart is and that your intentions are pure, students are first, I think they're going to buy into the things that you have in store or the ideas that you have and the goals that you have for students. I actually think that's one of my greatest strengths is my candor and my honesty and my transparency. And I think that's how you earn respect with your teachers and with all of the other employees and certainly with the community members.
Well, thank you. Linda, the same question. How do you plan to improve transparency and communication?
So I would echo a lot of what I heard Dennis say as well. All of those things I believe in and would do the same. I model what I preach. I'm honest and I'm sincere, and I don't embellish. I say what needs to be said with diplomacy. I treat everyone fairly, and I build the climate of trust where I think people around me know that what you hear is the truth. They trust me, and they know that I don't mince words around trying to for the sake of getting someone's approval. With the district that I'm in now, I implemented a distributive leadership model, and the whole purpose of this model was to build transparency around district initiatives, because a lot of what you hear in school systems is that they're left out of the puzzle. No one told me, and we weren't included, and it's feeling like something's been done around them. And so this model of leadership is called instructional leadership team structure is something I put in place there, because I do feel leadership is distributed. Superintendents don't act alone. We can't do this work alone. And we need people at all the various levels to come together ongoingly, collaborating around the initiatives around the work in a culture of respect for one another. And through this model of distributive leadership that I've implemented and I've worked with in Baltimore and in Connecticut, is around recognizing leaders from this seat, from teachers to department heads, from central office administrators, and through this tiering of a model, that transparency and messaging it goes through the system. And so through meeting with them, say 4 or 5 times a year, pulling out these leaders who've been designated, as persons who are interested, volunteer for it, or I even approached around, I've noticed that would you be interested, and bringing them together with me 4 or 5 times a year around district initiatives, around things I needed to get out to the community and to the schools, and having them be that communicator was the greatest way where they heard and saw the transparency, because it was in those meetings where the scores that Dennis talked about, those tough conversations around this is where we are, this is what we need to do, and we fleshed out how to get it done, where they were able to then take it back and at their various levels, principals at their buildings, department heads in their department meetings, in the elementary level, grade level leaders and their grade level meetings, that messaging became just a common thread that everyone bought into, heard, and that was clean, clear transparency. that we worked on together. So they became the messengers for me. And because with the work, again, cannot be done by just me. No superintendent can magically turn anything around. You need all the power, all the people working together, and you got to give them the authority to do it within limits or within their job scope. You got to leave them alone. You don't micromanage. You give them the leadership skill to do it. Because once you know you have the right people in the positions, let them do their jobs. Check in with them often, meet with them often, but let them work. And so they are able, through doing those things, the transparency just results, and that because they become the messengers for the work. So that's a system that I've used, but I would echo what Dennis said. Yes, we just have to just be honest around how we do things, be upfront about it, and build teams around how we're going to solve things.
Okay. Stay with you for the next question. What does a seamless pre-K to 12 experience look like? And what experience do you have at all instructional levels?
Okay. What does a seamless pre-K? Well, I think I talked a little bit about a seamless pre-K 12th grade experience. Is a child who enters pre-K, gets those foundational skills and readiness skills to be able to move into first grade, where they start learning those phonetic skills around reading and the sounds that are connected to reading, and then learning how that sounds make words and words make sentences, and sentences are now we're reading. And by the time we get to third grade, we're reading on grade level, and we're now able to read informational text because we've now learned how to read. And so we're at a grade level now where we're learning through our reading. And so that seamless transition on through grades 3 through grade 6 is where we continue to build their informational skills around text and being able to use evidence from text, read, and to comprehend and pick up those critical thinking skills and those problem solving skills and that discourse that they do in classrooms around learning in groups and working together. And then moving on to the middle school, where they are now able to use that in the various content areas, your science and your social studies, and those classes that are more concentrated on just subject areas, but they have the foundational skills to be able to do and read critically and comprehend and analyze and math critically. And I think that all of that translates, moves on into high school at a different level of rigor around the same content areas. And so the children are succeeding. If they get it here and they continue to move, by the seamless transition by 12th grade, they have all the skills they need to be productive citizens in our world. They have learned and mastered the standards, or those skills and the standards that this Common Core and the state standards have said they must have to graduate, and they're able to secure application for college and or a job in our workforce. That would be what that would look like if it's seamless. I wish it was that smooth. It's a lot of work for that to happen, but that's how it should happen. If we're doing, the adults in the system, we're doing the work and what we are supposed to be doing to help kids have those skills so that that transition is seamless. Can you give me the second part of that, Dr. Caldwell, again?
And what experience do you have at all instructional levels?
Yes, so I was an English teacher in middle school for 10 years. And so that was my first experience there. Then I was a high school assistant principal for 9 years in East Cleveland City Schools in East Cleveland, Ohio, a comprehensive high school of 2,500 students, grades 9 through 12, before becoming, as I mentioned, a middle school principal, 1,500 students, grades 7 through 8. Then moving to the elementary level as a principal of an elementary school, 400 students, about 60 staff, grades pre-K through 6, before now moving to Baltimore, where I'm supervising all schools, all levels, and then where I am now superintendent of schools over a district of schools. So I've had experience at all the levels, a diverse, urban, suburban, large, middle, small, elementary, middle, and high, and that's the combination of skill set that I think I've acquired, and that broad experience I introduced and said, and skill set that I've picked up along the way that has permitted me to be in the seat where I am now, and I think I bring to this position.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Dennis, I'll read the same. What does a seamless pre-K-12 experience look like, and what experience do you have at all instructional levels?
Yeah, if it's okay, I think I'd like to start with the second half first. For nearly 10 years, I was a classroom teacher. My certification is biology, chemistry, and general science grades 7 through 12. So while I taught, while I was a classroom teacher, I taught every grade 7 through 12. Regents biology, I was a teacher before the living environment curriculum existed, showing my age a little bit. But I taught honors students in the middle school level, physical science, taught Regents biology, and the high school level, I taught general science. I taught 1 year a section of general physics. I taught 1 year a section of Regents earth science. I was an inclusion classroom teacher. In fact, in the high school I taught in at the time, my inclusion partner and I were the first team to offer that experience in the high school. And I was a grade 6 through 12 science department supervisor, where I worked very closely with teachers in every grade from the middle school through the high school. And then, of course, I was a high school principal, where I spent time in every single classroom, every single discipline, and learned so much about teaching from visiting teachers' classrooms and really watching some of our expert teachers in action, and also understanding why people have passion for their different subjects. Certainly, as a superintendent, I spend a great deal of time in all of our buildings. And although classroom-wise, I was mostly a secondary person, as a superintendent, I spend the majority of my time in our 3 elementary school buildings, because I'm blown away by the work that the elementary school teachers do. It's absolutely amazing to me what they accomplish. In fact, we got derailed by the pandemic, but we were probably a month or 2 away from having some of our high school teachers spend half a day or so shadowing some of our elementary school teachers, so that they can develop an appreciation for what happens at that level. But regarding the seamless program from pre-K to 12, I have just a little bit different perspective on it. My goal is a seamless program pre-K through 16. So, I want, it's again, that obsessive focus on what happens their first day after high school. As a science teacher, it pains me a little bit to admit that on the elementary level, literacy and math are king, and they have to be the most crucial subjects at that level. So, I think we have to make sure that our children are reading and that they have numeracy and proficiency in those 2 subjects. That's absolutely essential and foundational. Having them ready to transition from learning to read to reading to learn is crucial as they move from the elementary level to the middle school level. I know from being a principal in a 712 building that middle school is most often the place where students find that fork in the road. And so that's why I think the growth mindset work is essential, beginning in pre-K, beginning in kindergarten. So I think that's certainly an important part of it. And then I think knocking down as many gates as possible, eliminating gatekeepers, so that all students have the opportunity to take the most rigorous program they can take, and have the courses that prepare them for post-secondary life. So those are some of my answers to that question.
Excellent. Okay, good. Well, we are at the last question, and so we started with Linda, and so part of this is an endurance test. So 2 hours, 10 minutes of questioning is long, and you've done a great job. I'm very, very impressed with both of you. So the final question obviously relates to the pandemic. This is the question that districts and the president and all of them are dealing with. What are your thoughts on how we are going to get students back in the classroom with teachers? And so we started with Linda. We'll start with Dennis. You first. What's your, as you see and what you know and you're hearing about the pandemic, what are your plans to get students back in the classroom full time and teaching?
Yeah. So, the answer is a little bit tricky for me. In the district where I'm the superintendent now, our students have been in school full time since the first day of school in September, every day, K-12. So We don't offer hybrid. It's everyday in-person instruction in our classrooms. But for full disclosure and transparency, we offered either in-day, in-person every day, or we offered distance learning every day. So we have approximately 17% of our student population that chose to stay home every day. And that did help us be able to have those that wanted to be in full-time do it. So we have a strict adherence to our daily health questionnaire. We have a strict adherence to mask wearing. We are constantly reminding people to wash their hands. In our K-8 classrooms, we have, in addition to the mask wearing and the social distancing in the classrooms, we have plastic shields on the desks. We do not have that on the secondary level because the students travel from class to class, and there's just a concern that having those shields could be a bigger problem in terms of leaving behind germs and vapor than not having the shields at that level. I can report that we've had approximately students, faculty, and staff, approximately 185 confirmed cases of COVID-19 since the first day of school. Approximately 70 of those cases came after the holiday break, after the winter recess. And to combat that, we switched the entire district for 5 days following Thanksgiving, 5 days following the New Year's to full distance learning, because we listened to the news, we paid attention to the doctors, we anticipated there would be a spike in positive cases. That strategy worked for us. Regarding Greenberg, our situation where I am now is half really good work and good thinking before we knew there was a pandemic. And part of it is we're lucky in that our high school building happens to be quite large and not filled to capacity. So that on the secondary level enabled us to maintain the social distancing. Where we had really good planning was as we had our student population declining, we did not eliminate teaching positions. We did not excess teachers. We wanted to utilize that personnel to reduce class sizes. And we used that personnel to add some math specialists. And fortunately, we made those decisions because we believed at the time they were in the best interest of students. That enabled us to have low class sizes in our elementary level. So part of it was good planning, like I said, part of it was we were fortunate. But getting back to Greenberg, it's the reason I mentioned the number of cases that we've had since school opened is that I cannot confirm, not even in one instance, I cannot confirm any case of the virus being transmitted within our schools. So 185 cases approximately. And in almost every single case, we can confirm that the faculty member, the student, or the staff member contracted COVID-19 in some activity that was outside of our school buildings. There are 2 cases where it's possible, and it was an adult to an adult, 2 cases where it's possible that it was transmitted in school. But that tells me that the masks are really key, and that we can't think they're going to go away come September. We have to remain vigilant. There is definitely a light at the end of the tunnel with some announcements about vaccine availability increasing, but it seems like that might not be available until late June or July. So we just have to stay vigilant. We have to talk to our stakeholder groups. In our district, we determined that the best possible scenario is children in classrooms with teachers, because that's where the most important work happens. I don't think there's anybody that would debate that or disagree. And so that was our goal right from the beginning. I would imagine that's the goal for the parents and the faculty. The teachers in Greenberg are probably terribly missing their students and those interactions. To reference the young ladies that were on the Today Show at Savannah Guthrie, it's clear that they need to be back in school. So it's going to be a lot of conversations with the Department of Health, with parents. In some cases, it's going to be, hey, this is the guidance from the Department of Health and we're not allowed to deviate. In other cases, this is the recommendation. And then we have to get faculty and students and parents to be comfortable that the recommendation might be 6 feet, but to get everybody back in, we can keep them a little bit closer than 6 feet apart when we arrange desks. It's going to be a lot of hard work. It's going to be a lot of faith. Some of it will be within our control. Some of it will be dependent on vaccines and please God, the variants that are out there won't derail our progress. But Dr. Caldwell, there's no easy answer to this, and even where I am right now, I'm sure this is the case in Greenberg, that we have an entire continuum of people's view on the virus. Some people believe that it's not serious. Some people believe that it's the most serious thing they've encountered in their lifetime. And it's getting those two extremes and everything in the middle to come together and meet our students' needs. So the challenge will be certainly persistent, but we can beat it. Together we can handle it, and it's going to be involving everybody and understanding a comfort level and getting people to make some really brave choices, I think, going forward.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dennis. Yeah, Linda, what kind of thoughts do you have about recovering from the pandemic and the students going back to school?
Again, these are conversations at the table right now and in meetings that I'm having currently. And I guess every superintendent in the nation is beginning to think about that. I mean, the concerns we have that and to motivate what that decision may look like is around learning gaps. How we're going to plan to try to make up some of that time. How do we bring everyone back? And with vaccinations and not being, in some places, I know where I am, educators have not been vaccinated yet. We're in phase 1B, and in Pennsylvania, they're still in phase 1A. So no, unless a person gets it on their own somewhere, educators have not been vaccinated, and they're on that front line as well. And so that level of respect that you're hearing from educators around how come we aren't in the phase 1B, or we're not with the workers who are on the front line as well. If you want us back in school, give us the vaccination. That's the conversation going on currently right now. I agree with Dennis, there's no easy answer. I know in looking forward that those mitigation efforts we're going to continue. I would assure that what's in place in Greenberg is elevated even more. The shields, shields, we purchase shields in my district, but masks, thermometers, signage around the walls and floors and halls, and wiping down and sanitized wipes and sanitized spray. All of that is something as we're planning as we go back in the building to just make sure those things are still in place. Just transportation, how we're going to do transportation on the buses with full in person, maintaining that 6-foot distancing. And Dennis is right. A lot of it is going to be motivated and dictated by our guidance we get from CDC as well as from the State Department of Ed. And so a lot of us is waiting for that. But I know we can't do what we did. I know we're totally different from this, and that we have to, whatever we do, look to plan for when we open school, how we're going to go slowly. Everyone wants kids back in school. I don't think any teacher, any educator, we know the importance of that in-person instruction, but the premise for all of this is around keeping people safe. And so as much as we want to be back in person, I think we do need to have tread slow and make sure we think about all of this. I have feedback from parents who are probably not going to send their child back until the vaccinations are secure. So you have all kinds of all different opinions on that you need to consider. So all of that is where you begin. Right now, I have a remote parent survey going out to my parents, just gather the feedback around this remote learning, because we're thinking around what are the paths we're going to offer students who may want to remain home and do online learning. So it's a hodgepodge of a lot of that. There's no real clear plan yet. I just think that's where we are right now, to begin to think about how we bring them back safely. So, because I don't know how you learn in an environment, even in person, if you're not feeling safe. I think right now we're about to enter our state testing. And so all students have to come in for testing for that grades 3 through 6. This is the elementary testing. And they've been home on the remote model in my district. And so I just can't bring them back without giving them some, reacclimating them to the building. Most of the teachers worked in their classrooms during that time. So while kids were getting remote learning, they could see the teacher in the classroom. But as Dennis said, over the holidays, we decided to take advantage of letting them work from home because we wanted to control for that outbreak that was potentially going to happen. So building in some time like that in Greenberg would be sitting down with the leaders. How do we bring them back safely, slowly, and meet that mental and emotional need, and as well as get them back into in-person learning. We know the urgency around that, but I just don't think we open school, they're back full force, and we haven't taken into consideration all of the constituents, all the stakeholders, the parents, the students around how they feel safe to even send their children, and how our staff feels safe coming back in those buildings, and how that instruction is delivered in the rooms in a safe and secure manner. So I would agree with, echo what Dennis said and just add those comments. I don't think it's a clear-cut answer. I think that's, again, where we are, and that would be something we would have to plan.
Well, I would like to thank both of you for a very, very long evening of questions, great answers. The district is lucky to have a choice of two talented people. I'd like to thank the community for 115 questions that we boiled down to these questions. These were excellent questions, really very, very good questions. So Laser, I guess you can turn off the live portion. And I just will say good night to our audience. And
Goodbye. Thank you. Good to meet you.
All right,
Yeah,
Elizabeth,
thank you,
stop it.
Greenberg.